and not only for that, but the health part of keeping the records is so that you know what could possibly happen within your family. If you know that, say, like arthritis is a big thing in your family, you know, Aunt so-and-so had arthritis, and so did Uncle Billy, and so on. Or somebody had dementia, you know, that kind of thing. You can put it down, and you know that when somebody comes up with some kind of disease, well, that's in the family. You know, say like rheumatic fever may have been one in my family. And so in this particular thing, I'm doing a shortcut. So some of the ways of getting information would be to go to your libraries and locally and the Census Bureau, but also write different places. If you know that certain relatives died in a certain town or a certain state, you can write to the newspapers or the funeral parlors that they were buried from and get information. The newspapers may cost you a little bit, and going to some of the towns for vital information, that may cost you about $5 or $10 a piece, you know, but it would be well worth it. And you just keep this stuff in one place. And once you've gathered up all your information, and this happens to have some of my family members in it. This is my great aunt Anna Bisbee. I was scared to death of her. I was scared to death of her. And one time I had to sleep with her, you know, at an aunt's house, and I just slept like this all night. But she was good to us. And then I have a picture of my uncle. And I think somewhere here, up here, I have pictures of my father who sang with a group called the Dunbar Singers. And so that was given to me by a friend of his. And so no family member had any of these pictures. So it pays to talk to people about your family and see what information you can gather from them, and compile the information and save it for your family.
Well, especially with the electronic repositories that we all have available to us. It's so easy to integrate it, and I'm sure there are commercial programs where you could probably put together a whole slideshow type product.
Oh yes, there's everything out there.
Share it with your families. So do you find that the commercial genealogy sites are of value to your?
Absolutely. And my husband has done some terrific work, as Irving has too. They're into technology, and so PowerPoint helps you tell a beautiful story of your findings. And so there are many ways to do things now.
But Family Search in particular, and Ancestry.com, Afrogenius, those are websites that are available on the internet that one can access quite readily and get quite valuable family information about your ancestors and their people.
This is one magazine that I wanted to talk about. When my husband and I first started doing research, which has been, oh God, 16, 17 years ago, after we were in it for about 3 or 4 years, Family Tree came about. And there was also a, I can't even think of it at the moment, but where you could actually put your information into the computer, okay? Well, at the moment, when we first started using that, my husband's family, his mother was one of 17 children.
Wow.
So we fed the information in and wiped the system out immediately. It wouldn't take it, okay? Because the individual that did the program had probably his mother and father and maybe 2 siblings, and that was it. Okay, so they had to go back to the drawing board. But it's called the Family Tree Maker. And you can just feed all that information in, and it spits it out so that you can actually see where everybody is related, etc.
Wow, that's fantastic.
And this is another thing that I use and I recommend. I have 2 grandchildren, and I have started putting information in this so that they will be able to research and add to this as they get older. And this is also another one that I have, which is the Family Tree. And inside it has information about how you get started and where you should put this information. Okay?
That's fantastic.
And it's great. And you can actually find these at most bookstores. They have them. And if you really want to save some money, go to some of the local outlet stores, and they have them there.
Okay.
Also, you know.
You had pointed to an article, Irving?
Yes, one of the periodicals, we publish a quarterly newsletter.
Right.
But the preeminent genealogical society in this area, HistGen, produces a glossy quarterly. And of course, most of your viewers are familiar with this movie that came out last year, 12 Years a Slave. Well, one of our members, Beverly Hector Smith, she has an ancestor who was a slave for 43 years. And there's an article about him and her family in the latest issue of American Ancestors.
Yeah.
Keep on going.
Well, as we say, we put out, I'm the newsletter editor of this New England chapter, and we put out a quarterly newsletter. We present at our meetings, there are 10 meetings a year, briefings or talks and presentations about the extent to which individual members and guests have conducted their own genealogical research and their findings. I was very surprised to discover in my own family tree that there was a African Methodist Episcopal minister who happens to be my great-grandfather on my father's side, who after the assassination of President William McKinley, he was one of the clergymen in New York City that was called upon to give a reaction. And his reaction to the assassination was published in the New York Times in 1901.
So how do you feel? Because
I was able to access that on the internet.
So, I mean, it sounds like that in a sense that by studying your genealogy, that you actually bring history closer to yourselves.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, you have to follow the history that you know, and as you go around finding your people,
right.
What was happening in the area in the era when your people were coming along. And that helps you put together a pretty good story.
Well, especially like Irving mentioning the assassination of another president.
Yeah.
We only think of Kennedy.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
No, you
And
have
like
to
it.
keep the
Right,
overall
and
history in mind.
by understanding that there have been
Yeah.
other assassinations, then it's...
But to your point about the new electronic and the new findings that you can use with genealogy, you can go a little farther. I mean, you have done all this work, and what my husband and I have done have gone to the DNA testing.
Oh, wow.
Which helps an awful lot. And Ancestry.com, I think it's AncestryDNA.com, and there are many others. 23andMe, there are many others where you can have your DNA tested, and you'd be surprised how that helps you with your history. Because I know in my case, I found that you know, they even tell you what percentage maybe your racial makeup may be,
right.
And they give you contacts in along the way. And one of the things that I found in my contacts was I knew about my paternal grandfathers, great-grandfathers, great-great-grandfathers, all the way up to 1783, but I didn't know who they married. But through this program, I found out who they married.
Wow.
Right.
And that talks about where, say, like I was a certain percentage African, a certain percentage British Isles. That tells me where that stuff came from.
Right.
You know,
That's amazing.
it's fascinating, absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, because I mean, you could go about phenotypical appearances. You look a lot like my grandmother, but she had Moroccan. She was Irish Moroccan, and but
That's the way it goes.
Yep.
But this is it's a new era, and there's just more stuff coming too. You know.
I just want to talk about this briefly.
Sure.
This is my family, the Phillipses, which is my mother's descendants, are getting ready for a reunion in April. And I decided to put together this family tree with some of the names on there. Now, it starts out with Richard Caesar Phillips, who was born in 1789, and he died in 1864. These are all his descendants. But the interesting thing about this is, I talked to a cousin yesterday, and he was floored. The Phillips name will no longer be in existence after, I would say, the next probably 10, 15 years.
Wow.
Because the last two Phillipses are two males, and neither one of them are married, okay?
Oh.
And what has happened is all these names here are the females. So these are all descendants, and I mean, there are names that you might recognize or somebody else might recognize on there.
Right.
But after these last two cousins of mine, there will be no more Phillipses.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
So does anybody have any last comments? 'Cause we have 3 minutes.
I don't know. I just sort of love looking into the history. I know I started a long time ago, primarily because of my maiden name, which is Langford. And a dentist of mine asked me if I was related to Sam Langford, who is an old-time boxer, you know. So that's when I started researching, who is this guy, you know, and how am I related to him? I really never have fully found out how I'm related to him, but I know that I am. I think he was a cousin to my grandfather, let's put it that way. That's what got me on my start. And then later on, when my kids were little, I got into it a little bit more, but I really didn't get into the research until I joined this organization. And even though I had some research capabilities as to having been an English major, they taught me to research in a different way. And so that I got more information about my family that I never thought I would get.
That's
and it just, once you find one particular
Sparks you.
Yeah.
yeah, oh
exactly.
my goodness, you get bitten.
Right.
How about you, Irving?
Oh, a lot of interesting stories. What really got me involved in genealogy, I don't know if we have enough time for it, was I got a request from a lawyer in Wisconsin who was doing a probating of my aunt's estate to provide him with a copy of my birth certificate and my mother's birth certificate. Well, fortunately, I knew where my mother was born and when she was born, and I went down to New Bedford to the Vital Records office in the City Hall and got a copy, certified copy of her birth certificate, and sent it to him. But across the street, they informed me, was a group of genealogists at the public library in New Bedford that was researching my family Revalians, which is a strange name, and that's my mother's maiden name. And I went over there and I met them, and I got enamored with what they were doing. It's just like these crime dramas that you see on television, where detectives are doing a lot of sleuth work, a lot of unearthing evidence. Well, that's what we're doing. We're trying to find the evidence that will lead us back as far as we can get in our
How about you,
individual
Joyce?
family trees.
It's just trying to connect all of my family, including my Irish ancestors, because my maiden name was Finley, and a lot of people were surprised when I came on the job.
You could be from Charlestown.
Exactly, exactly. So, you know, and working with this group, and my husband was one of the founders of this organization, and it's just been great, you know.
Yep. Well,
So,
thank you very much for you
you're
all
welcome.
appearing on Common Sense HD. I
welcome.
really
Thanks,
have
Rick.
appreciated
pleasure.
it and
Thanks
enjoyed
for
it
asking.
immensely. And I'm glad that you were able to find Burlington Cable Access Television Studios. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for asking.
And we'd love to have you come.
Oh, I'd like to have you. Okay.